spectacular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with money.
Hello once again from the Prim Reaper. Growing up, I remember hearing in the media a lot about girl power. You can do anything men can do, girls rule and boys drool, sort of rhetoric. Now, as much as this was trite and pandery and had the potential to overinflate one's ego, and judging by the behavior of some ladies these days, it did do exactly that, ultimately, this was a relatively harmless message to put forth. Its purpose was to build up the self-esteem of a generation of girls. At the time, it always had more of an egalitarian feel to it, because I remember there being a lot of similar banter from the boys to the girls as well. Even the drool rule comment could be easily flipped around. But it always just seemed to be part and parcel of the typical schoolyard behavior between kids that lasted until puberty hit, and we discovered that it didn't really matter who drooled and who ruled. We all just wanted to date each other anyway. But somewhere in the last decade or so, the messages being put forth seemingly started to change. No longer were we focused on the building up kinds of messages that we heard so often in the 90s, though they certainly still show up, often in commercials designed to sell products to women. Instead, we were starting to hear a lot more of the tearing down kinds of messages. And I'm not just talking about the boys suck, throw rocks at them variety. I'm not even just talking about the crazy, far-out messages like kill all men that people like to dismiss as being the viewpoints of only a radical few that don't represent the whole of feminism. I'm talking about the kinds of messages that tell men that they ought to be ashamed of various aspects of themselves. You're all very familiar with most of these kinds of messages by now. They come in lots of various forms, like school curriculums becoming more and more targeted to the way girls learn, with teachers treating boys like defective girls, or people interpreting neutral and even positive aspects of men's personalities as being toxic and harmful. Or, more simply, taking the negative behaviors of some men and then generalizing these negative behaviors to the entire group, like the way campaigns like #MeToo or #YesAllMen have done. These messages are absolutely not a rare view held only by the radical few. These messages are everywhere, and they cause a great number of harms, not only with respect to the legal rights for men or the relations between the sexes, but also to men's overall mental health and well-being in their own communities. This can cause men to react in a number of different ways. 1. Some men will just be able to put garbage philosophy where it belongs and continue living their lives as normal. In my experience, the men who are in this position are those who already have a number of social supports in place, friends, relationships, good careers, and these protective factors will help them to block out these negative messages. Now, the exact mechanism of how they do this will vary from person to person. The particularly lucky individuals who are insulated very well in these social supports might not even notice them. Others will respond to these messages by laughing at them and saying, "But really though, how many people actually believe nonsense like this?" Many who respond this way might not actually be aware of just how prevalent these messages are becoming in areas like academia, even to the point of scoffing at those who are trying to point this out. Of course, even those of us who are mentally healthy aren't impenetrable fortresses. Many individuals who don't think that they are affected by these negative messages might be worn down by them over time to different extents. After all, nobody really enjoys hearing these kinds of messages being directed at them. I'm pretty mentally and emotionally stable, generally speaking, and I still get twinges of sadness at negative comments too. The only difference is, I'm generally not facing them on a constant basis. Number 2. Some men who face these negative messages will choose to withdraw socially from the rest of the world. Now, there are many reasons why they might choose to do this. Some might do it out of a sense of guilt, wanting to hide themselves away from the angry messages being thrown at them, as though they've done something wrong. Some might do it out of spite. After all, if they don't want me, why should I care? Some might do it simply as a means of trying to protect themselves. As I mentioned before, fielding these kinds of messages doesn't feel so great. Who wouldn't want to try to avoid that, if possible? Whatever the reason, this will often result in an increased incidence of loneliness in these individuals. Interestingly, the experience of actually being alone, that is, being cut off from others, and simply feeling alone, that is, the experience of loneliness, can be considered separate risk factors and can both contribute to further issues. Humans are social creatures at heart, and emotional and physical deprivation can result in increases in depression and anxiety. This may be exacerbated in men. Women are far more likely to seek out physical connection with their friends as well as their partners, but men will rarely seek out this kind of connection with their friends alone. This means that even if men only cut themselves off from women and maintain their male friendships, they will likely still be touch deprived. This isn't always the case, of course, but much more common. Now, what is something that is commonly associated with depression that is far more commonly completed by men? Suicide. The links between social isolation, depression, and increased risk of suicide have been well documented, and the suicide rate for men has been increasing. It's really not that difficult to connect the dots here, but let's just run through it again for those who might not get it. If you constantly tell men that they are the cause of all the world's problems, more and more men are going to withdraw from the world. The more men who withdraw, the more men who become isolated and miss out on critical social and emotional connections with others, the more men who become depressed, the more men who attempt and complete suicide. And you know what's particularly sad about this? Not that it's not sad enough already. After all, these poor guys have withdrawn from society and are often suffering without a lot of supports to speak of, we still get the clueless individuals wondering, where have all the good men gone? As if there wasn't an obvious answer. Number 3. Another subset of men will simply flat out reject these negative societal messages and lash out in anger. Once again, this can take a number of different forms. I'm not talking about those who simply become indignant and challenge these messages in productive ways, such as through activism or through organizing awareness campaigns. I'm talking about those whose anger manifests in more malignant manners. One way this can happen is with those who respond to the negative generalizations made about men with negative generalizations made about women. Now, it would be hypocritical for us to be talking right now about negative generalizations made about men in society and not also point out the problem in making negative generalizations about women. It's understandable to want to lash out in kind when treated this way, but unfortunately it's not a good coping mechanism. These types of behaviors are not productive and result in divisions between individuals. Furthermore, people who converse with others who validate these generalizations tend to become more entrenched in their negative beliefs about the opposite sex. Another angry form of lashing out is decidedly more harmful than this previous example, however, and it is in those who wind up lashing out in a physically violent manner. Two very prominent examples of this are Mark Lapine, who singled out the women from a classroom, lined them up, and proclaimed, "I am fighting feminism," before shooting every one of them, and Alec Minassian, who, at least as far as we know, made a Facebook post talking about Chads and Stacys before running down innocent people with his car. It is worth noting, actually, that these kinds of violent behaviors can actually be spurned on by exactly the types of negative entrenched beliefs about the opposite sex that I was just discussing. Now, it's important to note that very few individuals who respond with anger are going to lash out violently. Far more will resort to self-harming behaviors rather than violent behaviors, but those who do are usually those individuals who have minimal social supports, feel the most desperate, the most angry, and believe the other side is a lost cause unworthy of saving. This situation is tragic for 3 reasons. 1, most obviously because of the loss of innocent lives and the horror this wreaks on their families and communities. 2, because it's never acceptable, but always sad to see an individual be provoked to violent behavior. And 3, because the people who do lash out in this violent manner wind up giving those who made the generalizations about men in the first place more ammo to make further generalizations, as now they have the definitive proof to say, "See, look how terrible these white, cis, incel men are." 4, Then there are those men who will self-flagellate in response to society's negative messages about them. They will take a page out of Anita Sarkeesian's book and start seeing how everything they do is sexist, racist, and homophobic. In response, they'll be more than willing to fall to their knees and beg for forgiveness. They'll look at their past behavior that was often likely innocent or at the very least non-malicious and suddenly see how very problematic it was. And some might go one step even further than that, our last category of reactions. 5. Those who self-flagellate and demand that you do it too. They're not merely satisfied with changing the history of books on their own behavior, on castigating themselves and turning themselves into monsters. They'll claim to speak for you as well. They'll claim that whatever insidious reasonings they supposedly had behind whatever they've done in their past, all other men had as well. Again, it matters not what your intentions were. These people know better. And trust me, it doesn't look so good for you. Tonight, we'll be talking about exactly one such individual. In response to all of the recent hashtag MeToo related accusations, he's come up with a nice little hashtag of his own, and he's handing all other men the brushes they'll need to tar themselves with it the same way he did. We'll be critiquing his new hashtag and the mental health implications that come along with it on tonight's episode of Men's Mental Health. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Men's Mental Health with your host, the most pleasant ghost, the Prim Reaper, the ever so lovely and beautiful Anna Cherry, and the boss, Alison Tiemann. Tonight, we're here, amidst all the buffering, to talk about a very overburdened individual who believes that he
That's
is
polite.
yeah, he likes to rewrite history and believe that everything that he did in his past is all of a sudden sexist now because, I don't know, some men have done bad things and therefore he's sexist. Everything that he did is now sexist, and clearly all of you men must be the same way. So,
I just want to point something out before you go any further.
All right.
When a group of people who are privileged by society, generally their violence towards other groups of people are either institutionalized or socially acceptable. It's rare for it actually never happens for a group of people who are supposedly privileged for their violence towards other people not to be acceptable. This is a truth about every civilization throughout history. So if you have a group of people who is constantly blamed and shamed for a minority, because every group has their violent minority, it's true about every identifiable group of people. There will be a violent minority, a group that resorts to violence to get their way or to express their emotions. But when you're looking at a privileged group of people, either that violence is a part of the system, so it's hidden behind men with badges and guns, or when they... Whoa, what the heck?
My laundry's done, you guys.
Okay,
Oh, gosh.
Jesus, your laundry is doing... There's violence against me in my ears. But when jeez, it's hard to recover from that. Yeah. But when they do direct violence towards a non-privileged group of people, it's just socially acceptable. It's just seen as something that when they do it, it's obviously justified. That's what I've noticed in my studies throughout history. So when you see a society talking about the violence of a particular group of people and castigating it and shaming all of the people who are in that group for the violent minority, you know that they're actually a disprivileged group, because they do it. They've done it throughout history. They've done it to Black people. They've done it to Jewish people. They've done it to every disenfranchised group. They will take a minority of that group and say, these are the ones, these are the violent ones, these are the oppressive ones, and they represent the whole group. It's an inevitable narrative. I just wanted to point that out in response to feminists using people like, well, Alec Manassian might not have actually killed anyone because of the Chads and Stacys thing. He might have actually done it because of in response to the anniversary of the Armenian genocide. But if he did, and of course, the other Mark Lapine, which now is 20 years of using this deranged individual to blame all men and cause them to suffer for. Well, using them is just, and again, they're a tiny minority, and using that tiny minority to stigmatize all men is an indication of disenfranchisement. It's, look in your history, look at the history books, and look at how people have demonized groups for being oppressors and being violent, and you will see it. And it's never the groups that are being stigmatized that are the ones in genuine power. So I just wanted to put that out there, because as an opposition to feminists using these individual men to blame all men. So just continue. Apologize.
Oh no, don't apologize. It's very interesting. Like I can agree. Like, we weren't even 100% sure if that was anything to do with the reason why like Alex did anything that he did, but God knows that was the narrative that was put forward, and how everybody likes to use a narrative to make men look bad. So yeah, and it's a very common behavior when you are talking about a stigmatized group of people, and and a lot of people might be rolling their eyes or scoffing, but look in your history books, look at how disenfranchised groups of people were portrayed, and they were inevitably castigated. They were inevitably cast in the mold of their worst members, inevitably. And they couldn't stop it from happening, because they were that sort of nebulous social power to control the narrative. They didn't have it. And this is what we're seeing. And again, some men will resist it. Some men will just internalize it and just keep going and just let it grind at them until they go into an early grave or kill themselves. And some men will embrace it and say, yeah, I am all of these horrible things. We deserve everything that is thrown at us. We deserve to be castigated. We deserve to be brutalized emotionally. We deserve to be blamed for everything. We deserve all of it, because God knows the way to stop people from acting out violently when they have nothing to lose is to tell them they even have less to lose. Okay. I'll get off my soapbox. No, I always love Alison's soapboxes. It's all good. But speaking of castigation, it's time that we men take responsibility for our role in the problem of violence against women. Let's get on with this nonsense. Men, listen up. In light of a year of disturbing revelations from the hashtag MeToo movement, and from last month's profoundly troubling Brett Kavanaugh hearings and his eventual confirmation to the Supreme Court, it is time that we men act. Certainly.
Are we allowed to interrupt?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God. I think you can just stop every paragraph, okay, Prim? There's going to be something to say to everything. And Anna, just jump in if I'm, like, talking over you. But the Me Too movement, huh? Okay. So now we're on the back end of it, and it's looking like a lot of the accusations against Brett Weinstein are falling apart. We don't know if all of them will, but a few have, and so what has the Me Too movement really brought? What it's brought is the ability for women to bring about, without any kind of due process, an accusation against men and have it heard in the court of public opinion and apply extrajudicial punishment to those men. However, when women have been accused in the Me Too movement, everybody stops, it goes to a screeching halt, and suddenly due process becomes important again. It's an amazing magic trick. And incidentally, from the latest statistics I've seen, in terms of sexual assault and sexual harassment, for every female Me Too person talking about this, there should be a man. But where are they? Why haven't they been empowered by this movement to empower survivors or people who've experienced this to come forward and talk about it?
Well, because anytime they try to, they get told it's a movement just for women.
Yeah, Go ahead.
I mean, theoretically, yeah, the Kevin Spacey thing came out of that, and that had to do with male assault. But he did come out when he had conveniently a movie at that time that he was starring in. I'm not being cynical all the way. I'm just saying, if this guy was assaulted when he was 14, House of Cards has been a big deal for like 6 years. So any time in the past 6 years, he could have come out if he was waiting for like the max height of Kevin Spacey's career to destroy him. Then again, it would have made more sense to come out when he was 14. But then again, what happened was that he got like pressed onto the bed by a drunk man when he was 14, which is like, against the law, obviously. And dude was like, no. And Kevin Spacey was like, oh, okay, bye. So not really prosecutable, but then again, it completely ruined his career. So that's fun. So that's one way in which men have had their day, was that one thing.
Although when a man came out against Christina, I think it was Christina Garcia.
Oh no, it's men against men. Patriarchy hurts men too. No, women. Women are perfect. Always. Never monsters. Not one. Not single one.
Not only were there cries of due process in that case, reading it back, apparently she didn't even have to answer to the actual witnesses. I think I remember this, that they just, for whatever reason, they just decided not to bring in all of the evidence against her. So it not only was when a woman was accused, did she get due process, she got weighted due process, weighted against the accuser. This is gross. It's like this, the hypocrisy is insane. Okay, all right, but anyway, let's continue.
No, but it's about equality, Alison. Don't you get it? It's about equality of women always having the upper hand and not playing by the same rules as guys. That equality. Duh.
Of course.
At this point, I don't understand why. Well, I do understand why there are certain men who just let themselves be shamed by these hypocrites instead of looking at reality, which is there is a significant amount of sexual predation and abuse by women against men. Full stop. I know there's a lot of guys, even on the quote-unquote anti-feminist side, who are probably squirming in their seats over that one. They're putting themselves into a pretzel of discomfort, being like, but it's true. Like, you look at the statistics, there's an unbelievable epidemic of this. And MeToo did nothing to address that. So now women can accuse men of the same sexual crimes that they engage in with almost no legal reprisal for women. I mean, a woman can basically rape as many men as she wants, and the police will give her a freaking high five and a gift basket. But now they can also implicate men for the very crimes that they engage in with absolutely no due process, with extrajudicial punishment that removes men's careers and livelihoods. It's a wonderful world. Let's get to the second paragraph, though.
Okay, yeah. Otherwise,
it's going to take forever.
Okay. Certainly, some of us men have spoken out on behalf of women, but many more of us have remained silent. Some have kept silent out of fear of being judged, fear of criticism or censure, others out of genuine respect. In fact, silence has become the default stance of many men who consider themselves allies of women. But given all that has transpired, staying out of it is no longer enough. I've decided not to cut corners, so join me with due diligence and civic duty and publicly claim I am sexist.
I am a sinner.
God, the cuckery is real. What?
I know, right? It's brutal.
And I mean, no shade on that kink. I'm not kink shaming. But this is like another level of maybe humiliation fetish, actually.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I am kink shaming. Yeah, I'm sorry.
It does seem to sort of edge into a humiliation fetish, or basically it's the beginning. Like, this is what we're witnessing right now, is the rise of the most ludicrous religion in all of human history. It's like a Monty Python sketch.
Oh, I can see that.
No, follow the sandal. So no, follow the Me Too. It's like, because essentially what he's doing is he's standing up and proclaiming himself a sinner for all the world to see. I don't know, is he going to get out the cat of nine tails, walk down the street?
Oh yeah.
Well, or
I mean, like this,
or
is
like those monks. Omne dissequium.
This is like the in-text version of doing that, basically. I can't imagine what was possibly going through this guy's head as he was writing these words. Like, it's like, what does the mental health of somebody who thinks this way have to look like? Like, his psyche has got to be in pieces right now. Like, he can't even form a cohesive picture of himself because he's too busy thinking, oh my God, this is what I am. This is what I am. Oh my God, I'm a terrible sinner. I must atone somehow. And everybody else needs to do the same.
If I may interject, I think he probably thinks he's the best man in the world.
That's also possible.
That's that's the cognitive draw for this. Is by embracing this self-flagellation, he becomes better than all other men. Of course, the issue is it's an incredibly apologies if I'm like just being this lay psychology opinion, but it seems to me that this is a real narcissistic position to be in. He has judged himself better than all other men. So he's essentially turning women's suffering, quote unquote. I wouldn't actually say that this is necessarily representing women's suffering, the MeToo movement. A lot of the people involved seem to be predators themselves, but she's using women's suffering as narcissistic supply by saying, well, by recognizing this, I make myself better than other men. Unconditionally recognizing this. So a woman can come up to him and say, I was raped by the dildo I bought from the freaking adult store, and they're to blame, and I'm charging them with rape. And he'd be like, listen and believe. Listen and believe. You were raped by an inanimate object. I listen and believe you. No matter what absurdist claim of victimhood, he will believe her. And any other guy who's like, "What? How did you get raped by something that you have to literally manipulate with your own will and your hands?" And he'll be like, I'm better than that, man, because I believe her absurdist claim of victimhood that is impossible. And it's all about the narcissism. It's all about his self-image as the best man in the world. But here's the catch for all the feminist ladies out there. When you stop being this man's narcissistic supply, be sure you got yourself a safe room that you can lock, because it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah. Especially if you, for any reason, trying. Because we've seen these, and we've you guys have done some. Back to some of these guys. Nothing like this to get aggro as fuck on a non-feminist woman.
Oh yeah.
Like the level of like, I hope you get raped, and like the level of the most vile sort of like anti-feminist, but not in like our sense, but in the sense that like is everything that feminism stands against. That sort of shit, they encourage it, bar none for it.
Are you having the same trouble with Anna cutting in and out? Chris?
Yeah, I did notice a little bit of cutting out, yeah.
I'll try.
I'm having a hell of a time with it. Sorry, Anna, I'm like catching every third word.
Yeah.
But yeah, but what you're saying, yeah, the aggro. As soon as you, for example, the aggro of certain feminist men, if you decide you no longer want to be in a relationship with them, yeah, it's a bit of a dangerous proposition. And the real solution to all this is to stop telling men they have no worth if they're not sexual with women, or if they're not in relationships with women, or they're not saving women. Because, if you tell a man he has worth outside of all of that, he's not good. You don't wake up one morning and say, gosh darn it, I'm a wonderful person and I have great worth and I got good hobbies and I got friends and I'm going to go kill some people. That's not the way it works. So if you actually want to prevent this kind of violence, start expressing compassion to these men and making them believe in their own value as human beings. And stop devaluing them based on the behavior of minorities who are reacting to your devaluation of men in the first place. Like, end the perfect cycle of fuck, please.
Well, exactly. And I mean, it's interesting that you say like it's a narcissistic thing. Like I can definitely get behind that. Like it's clearly this guy, like the language that he's using in his article, like it can really be a sign of, oh my gosh, I I know the way forward, and I know what all of you men need to do. The way he's talking here, like, to join me with due diligence and civic duty. Like, he's talking in these grandiose terms. Like, I know the way forward. I am your messiah.
Way to invoke the appeal to authority and the statehood, the sainthood of the feminine, all in just a few innocuous words. It really elevates them to, like, Pope status.
Yeah. But at the same time, though, like, I mean, this can't be a good long-term mental state for somebody like this to be in, though, right? Like, this constant devaluing of yourself, it's just never going to lead to good things. So, like, it's a really fragmented way to view reality, if you think about it. Like, you spend all this time thinking that the sun shines out of your ass because of how enlightened you are, but at the same time, you're completely detached from anything that makes you because you're too busy being devalued by everything else around you.
Well, yeah, it is purely, it's the whole syndrome of I'm the best and I'm also the worst, except he's the worst because he's a man, but he's the best because he's the one good man.
Sounds like narcissism.
Yeah. And of course, it's a really unhealthy place to be. Really unhealthy. And it's the exact place where, I'm not going to use Alec Manassian because there's Elliot Rodger. That's the place where Elliot Rodger was acting out of. Is this, I am the one best, but I'm also the one worst. It's just this narcissistic, instead of just realizing that, we're all basically dog paddling in life. Everybody's pretty much okay and pretty much good in some things and bad in others. And it's all sort of a thing. Not I am the best and the worst. I'm probably just somewhere in the middle, like everybody else.
Yeah, like a reasonable balance,
Yeah.
Something that you can actually move forward on based on objective reality rather than on what everybody else is telling you are or what you're perceiving yourself in relation to society's messages about men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he's constantly dragging around this albatross of being a man. So he has this constant drumbeat of I'm the worst thing possible. But I'm the best because I recognize I'm the worst thing possible. And in so doing, he's actually eroding any genuine self-compassion, any ability to be in a situation where, quite honestly, he's denied something or any kind of stressful situation and being able to give yourself a soft place to land. He can't do that. He's basically creating a bomb of himself, and he's encouraging other men to do the same. It's like, could you guys stop this? You really want to stop violence against women? Stop this. Stop it.
Yeah.
Like I said, perfect cycle of fuck.
Exactly. And I mean, it's really sad. Like I can think of, like, growing up with abuse, with an abusive stepmother, I can think of exactly that kind of mindset that starts to set in. You start thinking, oh, if maybe if I just, like, hit myself first, then maybe this person who's hitting me will ease up a little bit. And then I can kind of get away from it. And it's really sad. It's fucked up to have to think like that. But you can kind of see it in exactly this way, the way this guy is talking. But
I would say that there's a bit of a difference because I think he's embracing the idea that hitting himself first makes him better than everyone else. A lot of, like, that's a very different step than I'm going to hit myself because that means my abuser didn't get to do it. He's not in that mindset. He's basically identifying. He's like, okay, the women are going to hit me, but if I hit myself first, then I'm going to be the best man. The best man ever.
Definitely has a condescending, better, holier than thou feel. It is, as we talked about, a church. He is the head guy of the whatever sect that does the severe corporal punishment. And he says, for my Lord, thy God, I will, flagellate myself. And because I'm the first one to do it and do it harder and tell everyone else to do it, that makes me the holiest. Same thing.
The holy Pope of the Lady of Feminism.
Yep.
Yes.
Our Lady of Torture.
And he's here to declare his new movement, so I guess we can continue on with that. In fact,
let's move.
Perhaps it is time that we lay claim to a movement. #I am sexist.
Oh my
Bowel
God.
movement.
Oh my God.
Think about it.
It's so unself-aware. Oh. cringe. It hurts.
I know, right? But just think about its national and international implications as we take responsibility for our sexism, our misogyny, our patriarchy.
Okay, patriarchy, never proven. Basically, it's pseudoscience. Like, so what he's saying is, let's take responsibility for our sexism, our misogyny, and our imagined reality in which gnomes paint images of the world on our eyeballs when we blink. Like our completely inane and completely disproven theory about reality. Okay, flat earther.
Actually, no. Yeah. I don't know. I take it back. I don't know. He might be, instead of just unself-aware cringe fest, lol cow, it could be entirely... who is this? Where is this written? I need to do some investigation because it could be one of those people who think...
New York Times.
Okay, it is. It's one of those people who thinks they're smarter than everyone else because they're
New York Times, I would guess.
Because they're trying to manipulate and lie, and you can tell through their words that they have this like, oh, I'm just getting away with imagine the global implications of this movement I'm starting. Hashtag fuck yourself. Just no. What are you doing? You're so full of it, sir.
Well, it made me, I don't know, maybe if he fucked himself, maybe he would calm down a little bit.
Yeah, sir, he needs it, yeah.
I'm sorry, George Yancey, your article is actually, it's so unapologetically this that it actually is hilarious. Like this seems to be a Monty Python sketch about the most ridiculous religion in all of human history.
Are you sure the New York Times that's just the New Onion rebranding?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Might as well be.
We could only hope.
But anyway, moving on here. It's hard to admit that we are sexist. I, for instance, would like to think that I possess genuine feminist bona fides, but who am I kidding? I am a failed and broken feminist. More pointedly, I am sexist.
If only there was a strong feminist woman who could scoop him up and teach him the ways.
And spank his bottom.
Yeah, exactly.
No, sure.
There are times when I fear for the loss of my own entitlement as a male. Toxic masculinity takes many forms. All forms continue to hurt and to violate women.
Okay, what is your entitlement? Like, do you go out and rape
just
women?
The feeling of it. No, just the feeling. Because feminism, that's the thing. It's like that awesome talk mentioned that feminism gave men the one thing that actually Esther Villar from The Manipulated Men also mentioned that feminism is the one thing that is upholding the male ego as they still want to see themselves as this macho, strong, don't give a fuck about nothing, just gonna spread and put his junks on your face, just flop out his dick in front of you and just be a super aggressive alpha badass. Only feminism believes that. Like, nobody, if you ask a real person on the street, like, that caricature of a male, that's not real. Nobody actually believes that that's what men are like. And so the only person still, or the only entity still perpetuating the idea of men as a super ego-stroking sort of person would like to see themselves as a man is feminism. So they would lose the feeling of entitlement. That's all he's talking about, because there's no actual literal physical entitlement, no, but the feeling of it that is gifted to him by feminism, I'm sure that would go away.
Okay, this is definitely some weird. So basically he thinks that all men are Gaston, but at the same time he is the best Gaston in the world because he recognizes
his Gastonness.
That he's Gaston. So he's still the best man, because Gaston was very much defined by thinking of himself as the very best man. But this Gaston has discovered a loophole in which he realizes his Gastonness, and via realization of his Gastonness, he actually becomes the very best man again.
Wow.
Okay, all right.
It's pretty special, that's for sure. But I mean,
yeah.
it's like it's hard to pin it all down, because he talks about these entitlements, but then he doesn't really properly list any real entitlements. Like the closest
evidence. It's patriarchal entitlement, Prim. Patriarchal entitlement.
Patriarchy. Well, the closest thing he comes to an example of patriarchal entitlement is in this next paragraph, actually. And
well, he's a man who you should just take his word for it.
yeah,
Know what I'm saying?
he insists something should be taken here. For example, before I got married, I insisted that my wife take my last name. After all, she was to become my wife. So why not take my name and become part of me? She refused. She wanted to keep her own last name.
Very hard, did you?
Pardon?
Well, I mean, he insisted. Okay, well, insisting is, woman, you take my name or you don't marry me. But it sounds like she got her way. And so what is this an example of? This is an example of your ability to open your mouth and ask for anything you want, but a woman to ultimately say no?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that entitlement?
Well,
yes.
Entitlement would have been, she couldn't refuse.
No, that is to them that, yes. It's speaking up against, it's like an abused 4-year-old, like, you know, like if anyone knows actual abused children, or therefore women, people, etc., actual abused people don't talk back. They don't do anything to provoke. They do like not even normal things, because sometimes normal things set people off who are abusive. So they behave in a very, very, very weird way. So yeah, that it's like an abused child where, you know, you can't speak up to mommy even a little bit. It's like mommy dearest with the hangers. That is the face of feminism as we currently have it. And it is absolute lack of respect and submission to even resist at all. Yes, that is defiance by him bringing up at all that he wants something that doesn't align with her feministiness.
So basically, male entitlement is any situation where they want something that might be in an opposition to what women want. That isn't male entitlement, though. That is actually a complete lack of entitlement.
Yeah, no kidding. And I mean, like, it's not even as though, like, any given woman wanting or not wanting to take her husband's last name when she marries is necessarily indicative of male entitlement or patriarchy or anything like that. Like, I chose to take my husband's last name happily when I got married because there were lots of reasons for it. I wanted to have a single family name. My last name was a bastardization of a Russian last name that was several generations past. Yes, I know I am a Russian bot. I'm sorry, I admit it. But my last name wasn't even all that.
We got 2 on this one. We got 2 Russian bots. Are you guys going to start talking to each other and making your own AI language?
What makes you think we already haven't been?
Yeah, exactly.
Out of Morse code and oh, maybe that's what that you so-called laundry alert was.
Yeah, laundry alert, indeed.
Information between the 2 Russian bot AIs. I'm onto you.
You have no idea how much information we can pack into a soundbite that small.
You can't see this, but I'm doing the eye thing. I'm doing it. I'm pointing at my eyes and I'm pointing at you, both of you. I'm onto you.
Yeah, you got it. But yeah, so I mean, like, other than that, like, there was lots of reasons. I thought that it would be cool to take his last name. His last name has a history to it. I wanted a united family name. I don't know. I like the idea of having that connection between us, and that was like my choice as much as anybody's choice, really. So am I catering to male entitlement, or am I just doing something that I want, that I think is, I don't know, romantic, I think is a nice concept? It doesn't make sense to call this an example of male entitlement, is what I'm getting at. And for this guy to be like, oh, like, look at how terrible I am for having dared to ask my wife to do this thing, when I'm sure there are plenty of other women who would have happily done that, and they would have done that without him having to ask for it in the first place.
Well, it's about erasing any kind of contribution that a man might be doing. It's erasing any kind of acknowledgement of his role. Because, yeah, she is becoming your wife. And traditionally, I felt that way about things like in the 50s where women were property. It's like, yeah, bullshit. Who says who? Like, even with trophy wives and things that are like, oh, a woman, she's just property. It's like, yeah, no, bitch, she makes all the decisions. Like, since the however many years ago it was written
long before we talked about any of this stuff, that women have had the purchasing power in the household. Predominantly, women control that, and they have for many years, if not centuries, for however long that goes back, to the the steward or the head of the household, literally, in the whatever centuries, were women. As Karen mentioned, like, guys didn't even know where the towels were in their own homes. Like, women were in control of large swaths of domestic, etc. life. And all the guys wanted in return was just to be like, oh yeah, she's mine. Like, yeah, that's mine. Like, just give him that. Like, give him a thing. Like, take his name, become Mr. and Mrs. whatever the fuck, and then use his money, run his household, do whatever the fuck, be the queen and the chess piece, the most important one that still does all the things. But, like, just give him a little, give the dog a bone. Like,
yeah, that's what
something. But now they're trying to erase even that.
That's what they see in peasant societies is, that's even though it's sort of a hidden secret, men are presumed to be the head of the household. They represent the family in politics and all of this.
They vote one vote and it's the man. But
all of that was overtop the fact that women were the ones who were really controlling the domestic technology in a peasant society.
And what husband would want to disappoint their wives? Like, being in the doghouse, how far back does that go? Like, please, come on, let's stop pretending that women don't have power over men.
You want to know how far back that goes? You want to go in the Bible? People make a lot of noise about a woman must submit to her husband, but they forget the part where he has to sacrifice for her, like Christ sacrificed. In the Bible, they actually explicitly explain the doghouse thing. A man leaves his mother and father and cleaves to his wife. What that means is that in many ways, in a normal relationship,
and just like she does,
it's specifically the man.
Well, the Bible may be a little different, yeah.
Yeah, it's recognizing that in a relationship, men tend to be emotionally subordinate, and it's something that's even shown in modern science. When a couple is in a argument, it's the man who gets more stressed. It's they are and the whole name thing, the whole head of the household.
Also, how many jokes are there the comedians have about, like, just saying that she's always right is the way to win arguments? Like, come on.
Yeah. But that's, I'm telling you how old it is. It's something that was recognized in the Bible. It's recognized that women tend to dominate emotionally, and men tend to respond to them. And that's now proven scientifically. Men are more anxious during a argument in their relationship. This whole take your husband's name is trying to balance out some of that power that women have in a relationship. So, that's something that's
and also make the man feel valued, just like he makes valued.
Yeah, exactly. It's just I didn't take my husband's last name because I didn't want to do the work. Sorry, it's just like I'm not really.
I'm not even getting married over after 12 years. I'm like, I don't even want to get married for a variety of legal, etc. reasons. So don't even that should not be a marker of love for sure.
No, but at the same time,
if you're turning a relationship element into a power struggle, how much do you love a person?
Yeah.
I mean it. And how much are you really resonating on the same wavelength with her? Why didn't you find a woman who was okay with that if that was important to you? And if it wasn't important to you, why are you flagellating yourself over it? Because you just had an argument. She wanted one thing, you wanted another, and you end up just saying, yeah, we'll just go with what you want. What the hell? How is this your great sin?
No, I think he's full of shit. He's just pulling up stuff that's like examples of his terrible misogyny that, show how the like classical patriarchy, like, patrilineal sort of like, I was gonna give her my name and like say that she can't vote, like, do dumb stuff to prove his point, because I think he's trying to get viral or whatever the fuck.
Because he's the alpha gorilla, he's the silverback, he's the best man that all women should be married to.
Well,
and they should all take his last name.
Like, he kind of goes into that a little bit here. Like, I'm going to skip this because it's basically just him arguing with her about why to take his last name.
It's basically boring, is what you're saying.
Basically, because it's all the same shit as always.
Oh yeah, start with if you were a woman reading this.
Oh, God.
Okay.
Well, he's like, despite like the reasonableness of her offer to make a new name together, I dropped the ball. That day I learned something about me. I didn't respect her autonomy, her legal standing and personhood. As pathetic as this may sound, I saw her as my property to be defined by my name and according to my legal standing. She kept her name. It's like, okay, the fact that you saw her that way, how is that all men's problem? If you literally saw her that way, then that sounds like a you problem. Maybe you are the one who is fucked up, who needs to, maybe you need to atone for being an asshole. I don't know. It's possible.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's not even being a particular asshole. She decided, and he went with it. So, okay, problem solved.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like he beat her into the ground and it was like, you'll do this, or like you will die, or something like that.
Or even, you'll do this or you don't get to marry me. But I get to the next part, because this has to be the most interesting dynamic. So he's identified a bad behavior in himself, and he's saying, I did this, therefore, because I recognize I did this, that makes me better than all other men. That's got to be the most. This guy, this guy's a great mental gymnast. Like he's really running with the feminist narrative. He's like making it work for him. It's like it's pretty inspiring in its own twisted way, because he's saying, yeah, feminist man bad, all of these, but I did that too, and recognizing that makes me the best of all men. He's like making that whole narrative that men are defined by the worst of their qualities. He's like turning it on its head and making it work for him. But as twisted as this is, the only problem is that this is incredibly twisted.
Oh, of course it is.
It's really fucked up. Okay, continue. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. While this was not sexual assault, my insistence was a violation of her independence. I had inherited a subtle yet still violent form of toxic masculinity. It still
hot.
Right. It still raises its ugly head. I should be thanked when I clean the house, cook, sacrifice my time. These are deep and troubling expectations that are shaped by male privilege, male power, and toxic masculinity. If you are a woman reading this, I have failed you. Through my silence and an uninterrogated collective misogyny, I have failed you.
Okay, yeah, stop right there, buddy. Your mental penis isn't getting anywhere near me. You have not fucking failed me because you have no fucking relationship with... I see what you're doing here, Mr. Silverback Gorilla. You suddenly want me to be part of your damn harem. No, thank you. I'm not going to worship you as the one good man. Like I said, get your penis the fuck away from me. Get it out of my ear. It's not going in there. It's too small. All right.
Oh, but
The ear of the penis.
He's trying to stroke it real long and real hard in this paragraph.
The ear of the penis.
Oh my God. I know about how we hold on to forms of power that dehumanize you only to elevate our sense of masculinity. I recognize my silence as an act of violence. For this, I sincerely apologize. I speak as an insider. Sorry.
He's like the one good man collecting for himself some psychological harem. Like all the women's are going to be like, oh yes, you're the great man who protects us all from the evil masculinity. We all want to be in your harem behind your walls being served by your eunuchs. Like fucking what? Get the hell out of here. What kind of fucking presumption is this? If you're a woman reading this, I have failed you. Yeah, that presumes you're in a relationship with me. You're not. You're just some rando on the internet who wrote a hilarious article. A hilarious and twisted article.
No, he'll always be there for you, milady. He'll always be in the friend zone, orbiting, waiting for his chance to strike. I mean, waiting to be there for you as a shoulder to lean on. Anytime you need anything.
This guy's got a 10-gallon fedora. Oh my God.
Yes. Mental image of the night.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you the definition of the word insist, since this guy he's using the word, doesn't seem to know what it means. To take a resolute stand or course, to maintain in a persistent or positive manner. You did the exact opposite. You said you wanted it, but when she said no, you said okay. Sorry, you didn't insist. Okay, continue.
All right. I just want to take a brief pause here because Hoki Bukisa has sent us a couple of very relevant super chats, and I just want to get those in there real quick.
For sure.
All right, so he sent us one for $1.99 and says, self-flagellates. Yays, more daddy.
Or mommy, I mean, you know.
Yeah,
it's no kink shaming here.
Not to kink shame, but, you know, whatever he's into.
And then he sent us $4.99 and said, he's doing this in the blind hope that the whammen will lift him on high as reward for his sacrifice, and they will not.
Well, he's doing this like he's already got a woman. Like, he doesn't have to have all the womans. You don't have to collect them all, for God's sake. You got one already. You don't have to presume you're in a relationship with every other goddamn woman and you're the only good man worthy of them. Like, this is narcissistic. You see that? This is narcissistic. He's like, I'm the only one worthy of all you womans. And I'm going to prove it.
Exactly. And then Hoki Bukisa gave us another $4.99 and said, self-flagellation intensifies. Please touch pee-pee. Oh, goodness.
I almost feel bad, but, you know, at some point, if you have issues, maybe you shouldn't be writing for the New York Times, although it seems like that's a prerequisite at this point, but...
Well, at the very least, maybe you should speak the fuck for yourself and stop trying to talk on behalf of everybody else. On behalf of all women that you're trying to get into your weird fantasy harem, or on behalf of all other men that you're trying to, like, push away and
I guess.
Be better than.
Yeah, exactly. Be better than. Be like, no, you don't want those guys. Those guys haven't checked themselves like me.
It's just
this is George Yancey cocking the word.
He wants all the bitches to gargle on his feminist dick in view of their dumb, misogynist husbands and just cuck them
inferior husbands.
Yeah,
because he's all feminist and they're not, and they're not.
And he's empowered to save the women's, so he's the best.
He's the only one who can.
Yep.
Oh, I feel bad though because we're just spending this entire time mocking this guy instead of.
Well, I mean, it's a very mock-worthy article, to be fair.
Okay, guys, if you're at this point in your life where you're writing a story in the New York Times about how you're best man and how all women are in a relationship with you because you are best man, maybe you should start thinking about your choices that led you to that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it keeps getting better. I speak as an insider. I know about what so many of us men think about women, the language we use, the sense of power that we garner through our sexual exploits, our catcalling and threatening, our sexually objectifying gazes, our dehumanizing and despicable sexual gestures, and our pornographic imaginations.
What despicable gesture? What the fuck is he talking about? An air thrust, a sexual, like, wow, he's fetishizing maleness so hard. This is interesting.
Well, it's like
I kind of like it.
Maybe he was jacking off while he was writing this. He was just writing.
See, the three possibilities. Either he's an adult diaper baby lover mommy person, which is the first impression I got. And then I'm not so sure. Now I think he's more of the not Dorian Gray, the whatever other Gray, Christian Gray, the other Gray type.
He's the savage dominant.
Right. But he is like feminist in his real life, like because James Dean was a feminist too. But then he's terrible masculine ways, or he's like gay. I don't know.
Okay,
I could give you that.
All right, but I actually think you might be right with the Christian Grey, like savage dominant. And you know what? He will find plenty of whimpering submissives among the feminists.
or wannabe. Or inside his head. Oh, what does it look like?
Feminist women, well, maybe I shouldn't say most, but it seems like a significant portion, at least of the feminist women that I've talked to, are deeply, deeply submissive. And I'm like listening to them, and I'm like, oh, I guess this explains.
You mean paying sluts? Like not actually submissive?
No. Deeply submissive. Like when they talk about patriarchy, they are literally talking about what they actually want.
Oh, right.
So they're in this weird headspace where they're like, if I pretend that I don't want it, men will do it for me. It's just bizarre to watch. And it's even, like I said before, like a while back, I don't know if I'm just harshing on someone's buzz or kink shaming, but do you really need to bring these fetishes to a political point? Like, do we have to live out a state religion based on your fetish? Can you not just keep that in your own bedroom?
Well, clearly not, because his wife is apparently not having any of it.
Okay, let's continue.
Yeah. This is not simply locker room banter, but a public display of unchecked bravado for which we often feel no shame. We have heard many accounts from women of what it is like to live under the yoke of our self-serving construction of a violent, pathetic, and problematic masculinity. It is time that we stop gaslighting their reality. By now, many of you are probably saying, "This doesn't apply to me. I'm innocent." It's true that many of us, including me, have not committed vile acts of rape, sexual assault, and sexual abuse, the likes of which Harvey Weinstein has been accused of. We have not, like Charlie Rose, been accused of sexual harassment by dozens of women who worked for us, and we are not, like Bill Cosby, being sent to prison for drugging and sexually assaulting a woman. In this case...
Yeah, about that. So I researched this, man. And apparently, he's a professor at Emory University, which makes him what on the outside looks to be like such an Oreo, but or even a Klondike bar. But you know, God bless him. He's a African American man who is a philosophy professor at Emory College, and he writes about whiteness and blackness and racism and such things. So it could be that the lewd gestures and phrases, etc., that he's talking about could be, I know this is taboo to talk about, but there's different cultures that have different expressions of things. And so in his particular culture, it could be that they're more crude or aggressive expressions of adoration for women. In fact, the catcalling video, for instance, that was in New York. And even then, they'd had a hard time gathering all that much explosive stuff. But I personally have had unpleasant experiences and interactions in places that, have had different cultures than other places, and other women have had similar experiences where when they were abroad in certain countries, like in Turkey or other places, or like in Germany, there's things that happen that where cultures clash or differ, issues arise. So maybe he is coming from experience of a different culture that expresses itself differently towards women. I don't know, but yeah. So he definitely has some sort of something going on. But that looks to be his career of choice is PhD of critical philosophy of race, critical whiteness studies. That's a thing. So yeah, I'm looking at his research field, and it's critical philosophy of race, critical whiteness studies, and African American philosophy and philosophy of the Black experience. But now, critical whiteness studies, didn't know that was a thing. Sounds like Fukushima about to blow. It's going critical. I don't know. I don't know what's going on, but he wrote a lot of books, and he wrote a lot of publications about. And
I guarantee that the center of
rap
all of this
things. He wrote about rap and such. So I'm talking about cultures and things. There's what would Jesus do? Christology and whiteness. There's just a lot of stuff there.
It's interesting because the psychology of whiteness and all of this, I'm sure that he's a proponent of the CEDAW map, which is the Committee for Establishing Equality, Women's Equality around the world. And if you actually look at the CEDAW map, which, like I said, I'm sure Mr. Yancey really is proponent of the CEDAW, bringing about equality around the world, it maps identically to the skin color. So every place that is an absolute sinful hellscape is dark skinned, and every place that is basically heaven on earth for women is light skinned. I mean, I'd like Yancey to sort of explain how these two concepts, which are in direct opposition, how he squares that circle in his head.
There's an interesting thing about that with colorism or whatever. I just like to, this is related, but not directly. But just in general, it's interesting how that's a thing in all sorts of cultures and countries. Asians have it, even among Black people and themselves. They talk about light skin versus dark skin. In Asia, of course, there's like whitening creams for people who like work indoors versus outdoors. There's this implication of those who are darker, they work outside, therefore they're more peasant-like, and those who are indoors that are whiter they're more like aristocracy because they don't, expose their skin. They're more delicate. And so that it's colorism. It's not racism because it's in different races, like all across the globe, actually. In different races, this, not all of them, white races actually don't have that issue as much. It seems like because white people are just in general, fuck all the brown people, I guess. I kid, of course. But no, in general, colorism is a thing, which is interesting that is kind of a, something that you're talking about right now. It's not necessarily a culture or race related thing, but in general, melanin level of the skin.
Yeah, that's not quite what I was getting at, though. What I'm getting at is that he has this critical whiteness theory, but then he has this incredible idea that, it's obvious from all of this, he literally thinks that women's benefit is holy. Like, he's worshiping it. When he says that if I want a benefit that is in opposition to a woman's benefit, it's automatically entitlement and wrong and sin. Well, that means that there is no benefit in society that's legitimate except for women's benefit. So men's benefit can't be even allowed. Otherwise, it's entitlement and sin.
Sorry, he wrote a book in 2016. If you're wondering why I'm laughing, he wrote a book in 2016 that was Black Bodies, White Gazes. So that's a very feminist sort of language.
Yeah, no doubt.
So essentially he's equating it to male sexual objectification. I assume that he's essentially feminizing black men when he writes something like that. So he's taking away their masculinity.
White self-criticality beyond anti-racism. How does it feel to be a white problem? Is something he wrote in 2015.
I guarantee that the center of this man is this idea that he is the best man. And he is the best man because he advocates for women's benefit, not for women specifically. I wouldn't say he's really advocating for women, but he's advocating for their victimhood. He's advocating for their benefit as he sees it.
He's advocating for all sorts of victimhoods, and he's a professor of philosophy for goodness.
Yeah, but he's also advocating for the people that he thinks women advocate for as the most vulnerable groups in society. I think but the central thing is his fixation on women and defining himself by women. But anyway, you could potentially he could help men who are feeling ashamed and worthless. Well, I don't think this guy could help it, but maybe moving away from this, from absolutely and utterly defining yourself in terms of not even another group of people, but how you have constructed their benefit by, and their benefit being you saving them. Like, maybe you could work on having something else you derive some worth from instead of these grandiose visions of yourself. Like, maybe, get a hobby, I don't know, learn, get a pool that you have to take care of, or some plants. Well, maybe a puppy might help. Okay, go ahead.
I think like the main problem that I have with this guy's entire push here is just his idea that men ought to be like ashamed of these aspects of themselves that he is putting onto them. Like he's trying to boost himself up, that much is clear, but like he's trying very hard to push exactly this kind of complex on other men. And this kind of message is just so unbelievably toxic. Like I
to him too.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was saying earlier, this is not a healthy mindset for him to have, even though right now it's like he's smelling his own farts and is super getting high off of it. But
yeah, because he's like I said, his maleness is an albatross that he takes everywhere. He can't get rid of it unless he becomes a trans woman. So it's like, and I know some people are like, oh, you're transphobic, but there are some people who do that, and I'm not saying all trans women are like that or that's why they're doing it, but in this case, the only thing that he will get rid of his albatross of masculinity, which is, he has literally declared war against his sexual identity and said, but
he also said that he can't get rid of it. Like, it is, you know what I mean? Like, part of it is that, why he deserves to be, punished, why he's a bad boy, because he is intrinsically male. And there is something to that where it's like, in his particular culture, that's, very important for men to be seen as masculine. Like there's actually quite a bit of homophobia even there because of how important it is for a man to be seen as masculine. So that's why he keeps harping on the I don't know, the torture porn. I don't know what you even call it, but like, all these terrible things that men do, the gestures and the thoughts and all the masculine, macho masculineness that ever masculine that we all do, because masculineness and masculine, and I can't help but be all this masculineness, but it's bad.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like we're starting to see, and he's condemning all other men in order to obtain this role. Well,
because if he's going to cuck himself, he's got to cuck everyone else too. Like he can't just be the only dude who's going to be all, apologetic for his manliness.
He wants to be the one on top. He wants to be the one good man that's better than all the other men. But that requires shaming all other men. But it also requires shaming something that is integral to his very being and rejecting it.
The first one to shame and to tell the other men to do it is obviously the alpha. So
it's like a game of it's a game of King of the Hill. Who can self-flagellate and shame other men the loudest?
The hardest, exactly.
Yeah, the hardest, and then he wins. He wins the relationship that he presumed with all women.
With all women.
If you're a woman reading this, I have failed you. And I'm like, dude, you don't even fucking know me to have failed me. You're like not even in my fucking like.
But he just wants you to know.
Radar.
He wants you to know he's there for you, Alison. Okay.
You're not even in my fucking goddamn radar scope.
But just so happens, just in case, he wants every single woman to know he's there for them. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, man.
Okay.
Because that's why. Man, I mean,
if you want to resolve your feelings of shame, guys, if you're listening to this now, let's use George Yancey. Let's use him as a negative example. This is what you want to avoid.
Yes.
You want to avoid like condemning
Don't
your
be like
masculinity.
George.
Don't be like George. George isn't, George is not a happy man.
George is a crazy person.
You don't want to, you might want to just not condemn a huge part of your identity and do so in order to pretend like you're infinitely better than all other men and thus deserve a psychological 72 virgins in heaven. This might be not a healthy approach. If you find yourself doing that, just remember everybody is sort of average and they're all muddling and everybody thinks they're a freaking fake and
in 2015, Yancey published an article in the New York Times philosophy column entitled Dear White America, which proved very controversial and resulted in his receiving large amounts of hate mail and harassment. Mm-hmm.
Oh, God. I said on the last show that I was that everybody in a Western country is the white people of the world. So, you know what? I hold by that. Okay, sorry. I interrupted you, Prim.
Oh no, it's basically just like I'm trying to figure out whether or not we should keep reading this one section here, because this is basically just more of the same that we've been talking about, or whether we should try and move on to like another section here where he goes down.
Yeah, let's skim it. Let's go to the relevant point.
Okay, yeah, because this is all just like,
yeah, you did the job for us. It's boring. Let's skip it.
Oh my god, yeah, this entire section is just how he's
I trust you. If there's anything noteworthy, you'd bring it up.
Shitting on patriarchy again, and we've already talked that to death.
Just lots of self-flagellation, lots of masturbating over the word patriarchy. Got it.
Yep, and exactly. So I'm just gonna skip
in front of a mirror.
We have hidden behind a myth that boys will be boys, a myth that distorts our moral compass and stunts our growth, maturity, self-respect.
How is it a myth if it's... anyway, go ahead.
And smothers our capacity to love and experience the genuine ecstasy of Eros. And then...
Wait, what?
I don't know, but
wait,
what?
Wait, what? Wait, what? No, I'm confused. I'm so confused.
He's probably thinking about it in a philosophical way.
Well, I mean, like he talks about how this author is talking about The erotic has often been misnamed by men and used against women. Pornography is a direct denial of the power of the erotic, for it represents the suppression of true feeling.
What? Oh, he's one of those.
Yeah.
That's how he gets laid. All right. Got it.
Not only are we as men taught to deny our feelings, but we also are taught that sexual vulnerability is weakness, not the province of real men.
Okay, wait.
Does he mean pegging? What does he mean by sexual vulnerability? Like, is that a code word for something?
Okay, let's look at boys will be boys. That only means that boys will be energetic.
That's what threw me off, because I was talking about joy of life and then went to sex. What the fuck? How would it go from boys to be boys to sex? What do you want? What are you smoking?
Know. That's kind of a fucked up.
But no, I think he meant like locker room talk. Boys will be boys, like
no. Boys will be boys is usually in reference to kids. So yeah, this is. I'm sort of with Prim. This is quite the escalation. It's very bizarre.
Well, I mean, for fuck's sakes, like people lose their damn minds over that phrase, and they're like, "No, boys will be taught respect." It's like we're not talking about boys will be boys as in a rapist's gonna rape, yo. That's not what the fucking phrase means. That means like when a boy's playing with a ball in the yard and accidentally smashes the baseball into a window, it's like, okay, he didn't mean to do that, he was playing, boys will be boys. They are not. Nobody in the history of ever has used that phrase to excuse a rapist from raping a woman. And yet that is the way that people are using this sentence these days. And it drives me up the wall because I don't understand where that came from.
It came from the co-option of language into their particular religion. Like literally, their religion is society shall be judged by the benefit of women, which necessitates a constant stream of female victimhood to be resolved by people. And that's morality. And everything has to end up grist for the mill of that crazy religion. Like, I know that I was making a joke about this is the weirdest Monty Python religion that ever did religion, but really, that's what our society is cratering into. What we're looking at is a belief system that will crater our society. Like, this is the end game. It'll get into everything. Now it's in the financial system, and we could handle this craziness in academia and government. I mean, if government doesn't really fucking work, nobody really notices, except they suddenly feel a sense of relief. And we could handle it in government. We could handle it in comics. We could handle it in games. We could handle it in animation. We could handle it in all of these different organizations, even ones that we think are critical. But the one situation where we can't handle it, like it just infects this religiosity of believing everything needs to revolve around women's benefit, even if that benefit, it's like in the next 10 minutes, it has to revolve around women's benefit. Even if it doesn't revolve around women's benefit for a week, but at the end, women get more benefit, it has to do it in the next 10 minutes. It's this incredible myopia. And our entire society is restructuring itself to revolve around that myopic religious belief. And they're going to consume all of our language, all of our history. And, we probably would be okay. We probably could continue to exist, but it's also going to consume our financial system. And once it's in there, we're fucked. And it is in there now, so we're fucked. The cycle of fuck is, it's just going to fuck us all. I'm sorry, that's depressing. But, I think there's... I honestly, I always hold out hope for humanity because even when it's darkest, human beings manage to pull something out of their back pocket that is really unique and incredible. So I say that society is fucked, and I believe it is. Our society can't handle being restructured around this retarded belief system. We can't handle putting women in the role of God. And that they are in the role of God because there is no benefit that we recognize as being superior to the benefit that is accrued a woman or women as a group, or whatever that means. It's so abstract that it never really is benefiting to women as individuals. But that is the position that God is in. God in the past was the central benefit that society revolved around. Now it's women. Now the only moral system of any note, of any power in our society, puts women at the center of a benefit. And all of this will just consume everything we see. But like I said, and I don't think we need to despair, because human beings, they have that ability. Like I was saying, they pull something out of their back pocket and float away on a new raft that they just constructed out of dreams and hopes and inspiration. So there you go. I'm gonna shut up now.
No, that's fair. I mean, like there's a lot to be concerned about with what's been going on lately, but at the same time, I hope to God that it's not too late to challenge this bullshit, which is exactly what we're here doing. So
I wouldn't say even bother challenging it. It's their problem. They're the ones who are restructuring, destroying the very structure that they rely on. And I mean, they're just going to do that. And at some point, everybody's going to be like, well, that doesn't work. We better do something else. And the only thing that's going to get us to that something else is if the pain of doing this ridiculous thing gets so great that everybody's like, you know what? This is insane. They're consuming all of our language. They're consuming all of our history. They're consuming our comedy. They're consuming all of our mediums. They've consumed our government. They've consumed our media. They've consumed our frickin' financial system, and we really needed that. You know what? It's time to move on to something different.
yeah,
Something a little more sane.
Yeah, sometimes
Okay.
the only thing that stops something is a backlash or getting so bad that, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's
exactly.
like if you're a normie listening to me now, just watch. They will crater everything into their insanity. And they're not even liberals. They're not even leftists. They're just nuts.
Yep.
Because there are lots of liberals and leftists who are now like watching this and being like, what are these things? What are these people? What are they on? Some sort of alien mind virus. Okay. I really need to stop because we're now at like an hour and 20 minutes. So.
Yeah, I'll have to start skipping some segments of the paper here, but
I've totally hijacked your show, Prim.
oh, that's okay.
I feel bad.
Don't feel
I
bad.
need George Yancey to smack me.
Oh my God.
I'm sure he's enjoying that thought. No, maybe not. You're not though.
It's hard. Okay. It's hard to imagine exactly what this fellow would enjoy because he doesn't seem terribly consistent. But before I get back,
I think he enjoys adulation.
Yeah.
He would enjoy using rap for therapeutic purposes.
Yeah. But before I get back into the article, I'm going to catch up on these super chats just because some of them were.
That's literally a paper he wrote, but anyway. Or co-authored with.
Yeah. So Hoki Bukisa gave us $9.99 and said, in all seriousness, though, there is probably a biological component in his sacrifice. Natural selection has selected for female approval. Male approval doesn't matter. Female approval is what matters. So yeah, that basically seems to summarize this guy's entire push behind this article, and we're going to get back to that in a second. But Black Knight Fool also gave us $5 Canadian and said, at the end of Christina Hoff Sommers' book, The War on Boys, she says, after all, boys will be boys. That's why feminists are hostile to that phrase. I don't think it's necessarily, strictly speaking, because of its appearance in Christina Hoff Sommers' book. I think it's because often, a lot of times, these kinds of feminists are just hostile to anything that mentions boys in general, so...
Well, they're hostile to the idea that we could be forgiving towards boys, not like we would make any space for them at all. You provide them any benefit or benefit of the doubt. That's what they're hostile to, because their religion is that women's benefit needs to be centered in everything. Mm-hmm. You know, if it benefited women right this moment in the middle of a snowstorm to break down the entire house and build a bonfire, that's exactly what they do. Even though, you know, in like when the embers die out, all of the women would freeze to death. It's an insane belief system, and it's incredibly myopic and destructive. But that's what they believe. They literally believe that women's benefit must be centered in society. And that's what feminism was from the very beginning.
Yep. All right. So I'm gonna skip this section here because it's quite long, and he just kind of talks about his I don't know, his schoolyard activities and how they make him a terrible person. So that can basically be gone over because he summarizes it in this paragraph here. Later, I was also made to believe that girls were targets, objects to be chased down and owned. That is the contradiction. For example, at about 16, we used to play a game called Catch a Girl, Get a Girl. There was no equivalent called Catch a Boy, Get a Boy. After all, as boys, we named the game. We could count to give the girls a head start. We would then run after them. If you caught a girl, you could steal a kiss. Some of the boys attempted to grope the girls. The logic governing the game, unseen by both the boys and the girls, was predicated upon sexist assumptions that relegated girls to positions of prey. This is what American male culture taught us early on. Women were like meat, and we must always nurture a voracious appetite. This fact alone should challenge how we construe mutual consent. The game was...
Buddy citation needed.
Yeah. The game was orchestrated around what the philosopher Luce Irigaray, I probably mispronounced that, but whatever, would call a dominant phallic economy. Ooh. We chased, they ran. We were the pursuers, they were the pursued. Our objective was to get them. We gazed upon the prey, and then we would strike. Though the girls played, they were not to blame. We were the winners, possessors of conquered territory. That is part of the early training that I received when it came to my toxic masculinity.
Okay, my dear George Yancey, if you had access to the thoughts of the girls that you were playing with, I think your brain would shrivel into the size of a raisin in absolute horror.
True.
Because teenage girls are fucking horny.
Yeah.
And they probably were enjoying the hell out of it. And not only that, did you not have girls do the reverse? Because I have plenty of stories of guys telling me about how girls would chase them down or corner them to kiss them.
Yeah, I mean, like, just, he comes up, he says that he's got this game, Catch a Girl, Get a Girl, and that there was no equivalent. It's like, well, just because you didn't hear the equivalent doesn't mean that it didn't exist in some form or another. Like,
just because I didn't play it with you doesn't mean
yeah, you know, as people who were once teenage girls, I'm sure that we can all tell a story or two about our own desires in men and our own fantasies involved with that sort of thing. And believe it or not, it's not all a white sheet. You know what I mean? Like, trust me.
Yeah, it's not all.
Oh God!
All these virginal girls being totally in. Like, I mean, he says that this is masculine thinking to think of boys as as predators and girls as prey, and then he just does exactly what he says. You're not supposed to be doing. Yeah. He says that's phallus culture. Excuse me while I stroke my phallus.
Yeah. I just love the imagery of the dominant phallic economy. Like, wow,
dominant phallic economy. Okay, well, the solution to this, George Yancey, is to recognize the sexual agency of girls and the fact that all of those innocent girls that you're talking about, a lot of them were not innocent at all. One, two, they were pursuing their own gropey and sexual harassing and sexual assaulty games. Chasing boys down and kissing them, that was something I observed.
Oh my God. And you know
what?
They go even
or getting boys to, I've literally had boys, we got boys to chase us.
And for fuck's sakes,
they were chasing us, but we told them to.
This was called flirting when I was a teenager. It was not called sexual assault. Like, for Pete's sakes.
It's awkward flirting. But the other thing is,
no, but when you flirt as an adult, which means you get drinks and you have sex, that's also sexual assault.
Yeah, these days.
About the age of 16 to about 18 is when girls are, interestingly enough, younger teens, the assault, like the people who are doing the assaulting with teenagers tend to be boys when they're younger teens. Once you get to the older teens, girls actually start to eclipse boys in who is doing the sexual assaulting. So when you're talking about 16, 17, 18-year-old girls, George Yancey, you're talking about the group of people who's most statistically likely to be predators.
I had the maddest crush on a 14-year-old boy when I was 18. It was the worst. I didn't do anything, non-offending, a pedophile, but legally,
Well,
Not okay.
That's pretty. I mean, in 2008, 14 was the legal age of in Canada, and I'm just saying that as a legal fact. So there's some gray area there.
Point. I mean, it's
when we're
post-puberty,
talking
but
about
still,
teenage-
point is,
teenage-
like, that's very predatory as fuck, as well.
Well, and I mean, like, there's also Romeo and Juliet laws too, right? Like, I think 14-year-olds can sleep with 19-year-olds and 15 with 20, and there's a 5-year gap where it's okay to do, because people accept that, you know, sometimes people are not always going to be the exact same age. And
I mean, I'm not sure if it's 5 years. It might be more like 3 or 4. But, you know, that's the thing, is that having a crush on a 14-year-old when you're an 18-year-old and not acting on it, I don't know if that qualifies as predatory.
Well, I had perverted thoughts is what I'm saying.
I'm sure some people would call it predatory. I don't know. It seems to be a gray area. If you're a teenager and you find a mid-teenager attractive, there seems to be a lot of, I guess, you know, it's inappropriate. You wouldn't want to act on it, at least until they turn of age, which is 16 in Canada. And that would be if you're a teenager as well, not like a 30-year-old with a 16-year-old. But, you know, but whatever. What I'm saying is those 16-year-old girls, technically would have been the most predatory creatures on your freaking campus, George Yancey. Does that blow your brain? Does it like make your brain implode? That rather than a phallus economy, you had a yoni economy.
There we go. I don't know. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction of making his last name be symbolic.
No,
Yanni.
Yanni is the Hindu word for it.
Oh, okay. All right. Fair enough.
I didn't mean Yancy, Yanni. Like,
okay.
No.
You don't mean Yanni either. Like,
he already thinks he's in a secret emotional relationship with all the women on the planet. I don't need to add to that. If you're a woman reading this, know that I have failed you. No, you haven't, because you're not in a relationship, any kind of relationship with me, George Yancey. Please stop thinking that. You know what? I actually don't care if you think that, because it's your own thoughts. It's your own right to have those thoughts, and it's my right to say, my God, get your phallic economy off of my brain.
Exactly. So we can just about finish this here. Like he kind of goes through some useless
it seems
paragraphs,
repeating,
but
no, he's got some Donald Trump stuff in there.
Oh yeah, I think we can finish off on these.
That deserves an honorary mention. I think
these 3 mentions here. So this is why Donald Trump Jr. got it all wrong when he was asked which of his children he is most concerned for, and he answered, "Right now, I'd say my sons." This is pure obfuscation, a substitution of fictions for facts, and a form of dangerous denial regarding the reality that his daughters may one day face. With that statement, he lied to his daughters. Trump.
Okay.
Well, I mean, really, what was he lying? What was the lie there?
There was no fucking lie. What this guy is really saying, and it's this mentality that the one good man gets into, of every woman is his woman. But you know, he has to degrade or exile or kill all of the other possible threats to his harem. And that's probably what Donald Trump is getting at. Ironically, he's probably doesn't consciously realize that what he's getting at, but what he's saying is that my sons are being destroyed by men in power like George Yancey, who no longer feel any kind of kinship with other men, but instead see them as a pure threat to their harems and will do everything to destroy them emotionally, financially, physically, and socially. And I don't think that, I mean, I'm almost certain Donald Trump doesn't understand that consciously, but he's picking up that it's a very dangerous world for boys. And it's not necessarily a very dangerous world for boys just because of the actions of girls. It's because of the actions of men like George Yancey, who use his podium to inflict a narrative of shame and blame and emotional abuse on young men. Mm-hmm. Because he wants to feel, like literally, he wants to feel, like right there. You know, if you're a woman reading this, I have failed you. He wants to feel like he has a right to a relationship with me because of his opinion about other men. I'm like, screw you, Yancey, you have a fucking wife. Don't emotionally and psychologically and philosophically cheat on your wife with this imaginary harem you've constructed by saying that all other men aren't worthy of women. It's gross. We're talking about having a fully fledged sex life. I guarantee if you stop doing that, you'll actually be having sex with your wife instead of having sex with just a physical manifestation of your fucking harem, mental harem. Okay, just putting it out there.
Well, and I mean, like, also, like, in his saying with that statement, he lied to his daughters. Like, he's, like, we've talked on several other shows about the whole victimhood culture with women. He's basically doing a dual duty in this paragraph. He's building up victimhood culture for women, and he's also building up that shame culture for men that we've been talking about. That is so terrible for boys. And I mean, you know, a lot of women, let's be honest here. A lot of women will not be victimized by men in their lives. Like, this is something that, I don't know, I guess it's become taboo to say this, but, you know, let's pretend for a second that the 1 in 5 statistic is true. Even though it's not, it's exaggerated, that has been proven many times over again, but let's pretend, just for the sake of saying, that the 1 in 5 argument about women's victimization is true. This still means that the majority of women will not be victimized in their lifetime. 4 out of 5 women will not be victimized in their lifetime. But he is still putting this idea forward, like women need to be afraid for their lives because of men. And he is saying that all men need to be ashamed of themselves, that all men need to change themselves, they need to self-flagellate, they need to apologize and take on the mantle that they are sexist, even though the vast majority of women will not be victimized by men, will not ever have anything against men, and it doesn't matter to him. He's saying, nope, if you are a man, that is enough to implicate you. You need to take on this mantle that I'm putting out here. You need to be ashamed of yourself. And that is something that I really, really, really need to stand up against, because no, men do not need to be ashamed of themselves. Most men, definitely most men, have done nothing wrong. They have done nothing to deserve this bullshit that you're trying to put on them, and it really pisses me off that he thinks that he has the authority to say that they need to take on this label anyway. No, they do not. For your own mental health, everybody listening to this, you never ever listen to guys like this. This guy does not know his ass from a hole in the ground. Holy shit. Well, rant over.
Well, it's really simple. He's doing this because he's not even doing it for women. He's doing it to turn women's suffering, insofar as it actually exists, I mean, into narcissistic supply. I mean, I don't really care if he turns the suffering of women who aren't actually suffering and just pretending to suffer, or dealing with something that they should nut up and actually not cry about. I don't care, that he's absorbing their so-called suffering and using it for his narcissistic supply. But this guy is also obscurificating true suffering, and he's promoting a narrative that, put it this way, let me put it really bluntly. The things that George Yancey believes means that more women will be raped, more women will be beaten, and more women will be killed, because what he believes refuses to acknowledge the science behind why this violence happens and how to actually reduce it. He refuses to acknowledge it because it's inconvenient to his narcissistic supply. So he is actually complicit with a system that's causing more women to be harmed. So in so-called advocating for women's suffering, he's advocating for women to suffer. And you should not listen to this man, because he doesn't care about women. He doesn't care about men. He cares about George Yancey. He hasn't. If he genuinely wanted his wife to change her name to feel like he owned her, he hasn't actually really challenged that. He still thinks that he should own women, all women. And he thinks he should own all women because he's better than all men. George Lancey has absolutely no introspection, which makes it really ironic that he's a professor of philosophy. Know thyself, huh?
Oh, God.
All right. That's my final word.
Yeah, I guess we can just go ahead and read these last two things here and call it a day. But yeah, Trump Jr. should get his priorities straight. In a male-dominated and sexist toxic world, a world where his own father grabs women's genitalia and kisses them without their permission, it is our daughters who should concern us as targets of sexual violence. Trump Jr. should be concerned about raising his sons not in the image of his own father, but in the image of those of us men who are prepared to recognize our soul murder, our toxic masculinity, and to do something about it. What are we afraid of? Well, sir, I am afraid of your unending self-hatred and also, confusingly, self-love in a weird, twisted, disgusting way that just makes me shudder inside. And you need to get the hell away from us women with your phallic economy, and you also need to get the hell away from other men with your insistence on collective guilt for something that most men have never done. If you feel guilty about something that you have done, that is on you, sir, but you do not get to push that on anybody else.
I think we can go now.
Yeah.
Yeah, amen.
I think so.
Do you want me to do a little shill?
Go for it.
If you enjoyed this content, please support us. www.feedthebadger.com. That is where you should go if you want to continue to listen to us talk about how you shouldn't listen to men like George Yancey. www.feedthebadger.com.
Perfect. And
all right,
if nobody else has anything to say, I guess I will go ahead and end on that matter. What are we afraid of? We're afraid of people like you, George Yancey. Stay the hell away from me. And to everybody else,
keep your phallic economy away. Give it away.
Yeah, I prefer to live in George
Give
Yancey's
please.
non-phallic economy. Thank you. And to everybody else, thank you very much for listening, and have a good night.